I guess the first question I want to have is about just getting the interview. So if you think about the job searching process, there's sort of a series of events that sort of needs to happen. You have getting the interview, you have like going to the interview, and you have like getting an offer and then accepting an offer, and then you have like first day on the job. So sort of thinking about that type of a flow, about sort of like what are the first steps. You think about the first steps, getting an interview is one of them. Sometimes even getting your foot in the door can be a challenge. How did you get your interviews, and do you have any advice about approaching companies in general?
I don't mind jumping in. This is Ben. So I think at first I took the approach of just blunt force trauma, apply to every single job that you think you could be remotely qualified for and hope you hear back. But actually you heard back from way too many jobs. I heard back from so many jobs that I was uncomfortable trying to interview for all of them. So I really cut it down to the only things that I was super interested in and thought I was actually going to be a good fit for and seemed like a good environment based on all the research I'd done online, talking to developers that work there. So I ended up finding a few really good spots that I liked. The blunt force, just apply to every single job that you can find, will usually lead you down at least some sort of right path if you do enough research about the companies, because you can also find really bad companies that are responding to you.
How come you turned the first one down?
It just didn't seem like it was going to be a great place to work. It seemed like they had pretty high turnover. I didn't want to get myself into a place where I wasn't going to be growing much as a developer. I wanted to go somewhere that, was constantly changing and, it was really improving. This place seemed like it was mostly just supporting like almost a forum type application that you could build pretty quickly. So it just didn't seem like it was a good place to go and grow.
So for me, it was a little bit different, right? I didn't have a background at all in web development or any kind of a computer tech type of career. So when I was blasting out resumes, and I don't think I went as crazy as Ben did, but I started sending out a couple of resumes, and I really wasn't getting too much happening on that end. I'm a big believer of, just because that's what worked for me, is kind of meeting people in person. So I started looking for events around my neighborhood, around the area, and just kind of started making myself visible in the community. What ended up really working well for me is just kind of introducing myself as a new developer in the area and trying to get my feet wet in the community. That led to meeting a couple of people that were the founders of Sensei. At first, it wasn't something where we were going to end up working together. It was just kind of like meeting, running into each other. Since I wasn't getting too much on the application part of blasting resumes, I kind of asked one of the founders if they'd mind forwarding my resume to someone that needed a developer. I knew what I was doing. I was really trying to get them to hire me, but I didn't ask directly. I just said, hey, if you know anyone, here's my resume, let me know. That ended up getting forwarded to about 12 recruiters, I think, 10 or 12 recruiters. And then I just started getting phone calls from them. So I went about 3 or 4 interviews on that, a couple phone interviews as well. And eventually I didn't end up with any of them. I ended up getting hired by Sensei themselves. So my plan worked.
Did they even interview you, or did they just realize that they wanted you and they were just like...
No, I helped them out, just kind of a goodwill, kind of taking those small projects. We didn't discuss any kind of payment, any kind of anything really for the first things I was doing. I was just, hey, they needed help. I was anxious to start practicing on a code base that was not non-stereo or Flickster or Splurdy. So I said, sure, let's do this. And it ended up turning out well. They actually did end up back paying me for the work that I did.
Oh, cool.
At the beginning of that. So that was really, really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting using that sort of mentality of sort of like building such a deep relationship with somebody that they just like, they trust you, and it's not like an interview, because like you know each other and you trust each other, you've worked together. So what was your like strategy at like the meetup events and stuff like that?
What ended up working is tech events, so not necessarily Ruby events. Tech events were good because in Ruby events, a lot of the people that are going to these, for some reason, they have their mentality set on getting someone senior. And on tech events, people just need to build stuff. They're asking, well, can you build this? If you say yes, then more than likely, at least you'll get a shot. Now, you got to use a little bit of good judgment, because you don't know who might just be trying to get some free work out of you. But if you get a good feeling and you have nothing else and you want to start getting your hands wet or your feet wet with someone else's code base, then that's something that worked for me.
For me, one of the big things was networking, and I'm not naturally a networking kind of guy. Like asking favors and schmoozing, shaking hands, all that kind of stuff just isn't for me. Just letting people know that you're a software developer. I found, there were connections I made that I didn't realize were in a related field, or people who didn't know that I was in this field. So just starting to network, going to Ruby events. I didn't go into any regular, like just tech events like Angel did, but went to Boston. Boston Ruby has like project night. So I went to a project night. I went to one of their regular just meetups. I went to a hackathon. The idea just to meet people through connections. You know, I had offers to, hey, I'll connect you with the CTO of some small startup. Okay. They're not hiring, but if you want to chat with them, okay, spend half an hour on the phone chatting with a CTO. It's a great way to just learn more about the industry, find out what's going on in the dev world. Each time you explain sort of who you are, where you come from, what you're looking for, you get a little better at it. You start to realize which questions you didn't quite know how to answer or which kind of sounded corny. So, you know, just having those conversations with a lot of people, you start to relax about it. You're able to tell your story a little better.
I think that's such a key thing, especially when you're meeting new people. You got to kind of have to think about what your story is and know how to tell it. You get a little bit nervous, especially if you're in an uncomfortable environment where it's all new to you. So someone asks you, well, so tell me about you, you know, how'd you learn coding? And then you start mumbling through your own story. Then it doesn't help, right? Take a little bit of time and think, okay, what do I want to share? What do I want people to know about me that would kind of make them be curious about why I'd be willing to put myself through a 12-week boot camp to change careers or to get into a new field. And if you kind of get that down, then you'll start realizing that conversations tend to extend longer because now people have questions not about your code, they have questions about you. I think it kind of starts with that, you know, sharing who you are, what makes you different than anyone else out there.
You guys touched on like the story, and having a story is really important. And I think right now, the way that you tell your story is pretty different than when you first started out. Like now you have just a different story to tell, right? Like Angel, now your story is all around Sensei and sort of the cool app you're building in the Twilio integration. And like Aaron, your story is about sort of the craziness of startup life, running out of capital. But like before you had sort of like the work experience to tell your story, how did you present it?
For me, it was that, you know, my whole life I've been about logic. I've been about solving problems. That's what I am. You know, I'm a problem solver. So whether it's, you know, coding, which I've always loved to do, but never really thought of as a career, or whether it's, you know, solving Sudokus or, you know, whatever I happen to be doing, I'm a problem solver. Coding is part of what they're looking for, but they're looking for somebody who's responsible, somebody who's sensible, somebody who can communicate. If you're a smart person, if you can learn well, you know, you can learn a lot of the coding on the job. So being able to just talk about the things you were successful with, how you handled problems, how you succeeded, how you remedied a solution, how you work with other people. That's really how you tell your story, and just talking about the passion that you have for coding and how you were enlightened and had this epiphany of, you know, this is the career for me. Because they want to know that you're not going to just go do something else in 3 months.
There's two parts to that, right? So first, there's the story that you tell when you're just meeting people at an event. So if you're just trying to kind of build a relationship, I think you tell your story, but you don't expect much out of it. Because then if you're just sharing your story because you're trying to get them to immediately give you an interview, then it comes across as that. What I found is that if I kind of just went around and just asked people like, hey, cool, so what are you up to? What are you working on? Tech people are usually building something. What are you building? Whether they're a founder or whether they're a developer, they're building something, right? Kind of take interest on that. The conversation will flow to, well, what about you? And then that's kind of your opportunity to kind of share a little bit about what you're doing. So when that question would come up, I'd say, well, you know what? I'm very new to the tech scene in LA. I'm a brand new developer. I just made a career switch to this. And I'm kind of just looking to kind of meet the people in the community and get started. And then that would lead to another question, something like, oh, really? How'd you get into development or why coding? Then I would share a little bit about my background. You know, I came from the car business. I used to have a dealership, et cetera, et cetera. You get a lot of the why questions. Well, why would you want to do that? You know, and you kind of just share why. I mean, for me, it was I always loved tech. I knew that I always enjoyed working with tech. I just hadn't had the opportunity to do it. Now I saw my opportunity. I jumped on it. Once that got going, it's just the conversation continues flowing, whatever the topic continues to be. I was never trying to like close someone on something. It was more of like, hey, next time I run into you, it's no longer going to be a stranger. It's going to be someone that I know that's going to ask me, hey, how's the job search going? Or I'm going to ask them, hey, how's the startup going? How's the project going?
Yeah, it's super interesting building like a meaningful relationship instead of like trying to like do a transaction and sort of get the job. So it's such a subtle thing, but it's so important, I think.